What's up, everybody? My name is Isaiah Newsom, and this is the Zay News Podcast, where we talk about all things hoops, whether it's the NBA, college hoops, youth sports, you name it. If it's about basketball, we talk about it here. If you like the content, make sure to like, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. But with all that being said, we are in April now. It is the best time of the year because it is NBA playoff season, right? The regular season just wrapped up a few days ago. We had our first two playing games last night between the Hornets and the Miami Heat, and then the Suns and the Portland Trailblazers. Both of those games were dynamic, high leverage games, came down to the wire, and they were a lot of fun to watch. We were going to talk about both of them, and then we were going to talk about potential and already set playoff matchups upcoming here over the weekend and how I see the first round shaken out. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first things first, I wanted to talk about the Hornets versus the Heat first because that was such an electric game. And now before I get too deep into it, I had to go back and rewatch the game because I had my men's league championship last night. We were hooping. Unfortunately, we came in through the losers bracket, so we had to win two back to back, and we just got gassed in that second game, and we ended up falling short. But it was a great season, right? A lot of fun as always, getting buckets with the homeboys. Anyways. Okay, this Hornets versus Heat game. Let's talk about it. So the reason why I want to talk about this game first is because this game was so electric. Now I watched the Heat play. Um, as I said, this game was so electric. Now, I've watched the Heat play a few times this year. I've watched the Hornets play a lot, especially as they've gotten better progressively, since January and just been playing really high level basketball. And both of these teams, are pretty high paced teams, right? They like to get up and down. You got LaMelo Ball passing the ball ahead, advancing the ball in transition, getting guys quick shots, quick threes. And then you got the Heat who have just decided to play a much faster brand of basketball, I would say, than they typically have played in the past couple of years. And the reason I frame it like that is because that was evident from the jump, right? That game was so fast paced. I was watching that game and getting tired. And the thought that kept coming to my head just randomly is, I don't know if I could play at this pace of basketball right now. Well, like obviously you're not in the NBA, but like more specifically, I was wondering, I was asking myself, how many minutes could I play in this game before just absolutely being gassed, right? Like a normal NBA game, I'm like, I could maybe give 15 minutes. Now, I'm not saying it would be an effective 15 minutes or like I'm an NBA player, but I'm saying like just conditioning wise, how long could I be out there and not just completely crumble under the conditioning of an NBA game? And I had to ask myself last night, like, could I play any minutes on this court? This game was so fast paced. You know what I'm saying? It was insane how these guys were getting up and down the court, the quick shot making, the level of conditioning out of both teams. And that pace was sustained throughout the course of, those four quarters into overtime. And that's what I took away most from that game, just the sheer pace of it. But then, if you break the game down and you get into player performances and stuff, LaMelo played really good basketball game. It was unfortunate to see Bam go down, especially the way that he went down with just a weird play. And LaMelo spoke to it in the post game presser. I do think it was a weird play. Like he was in a weird position. He falls down, gets hit, and you're just kind of like, I think I don't think he intentionally meant to trip Bam. Like his goal wasn't to trip Bam, but I do think he was probably frustrated that he felt like he got hit pretty hard, and he wanted to retaliate in some, and that was just like, the closest thing to him. But I don't think there was like malice in the way of him like trying to get Bam out of the game, if that makes sense. It was an unfortunate play though, definitely a weird one, not something that should be part of the game. And if he gets fined for it or if he gets suspended for it, you know, then I guess you just got to kind of eat that if you're LaMelo. But I don't know what my ruling would be in that play because it was a weird one. It was a weird incident, and I know Eric Spoelstra got on the referee for not seeing that, but I think it's just an awkward motion that your ref probably wasn't even looking for. You know what I'm saying? Not to give him a pass, right? You got to see those things to keep guys safe, or even review it. I mean, you have all the tools to review stuff, but just weird. But other than that, you move past that. It was still a great game. It was still an electric game. You had guys like uh, Mitchell making big plays for the Heat. You had Norman Powell make some big plays down the stretch. You had Miles Bridges play a great game. You had Brandon Miller play a great game. LaMelo played a great game. Con Knipple, he's went through about a month-long stretch now where he struggled a little bit, and I think, I know he's dealing with that back injury. And probably the back injury mixed with the pace that they play probably just isn't easy to sustain the level of play that he's been playing at recently. And that's okay. And, this is going to be his first shot at the playoffs as a rookie. I think he will compete hard. I think he will still find some success and he'll find a rhythm as games continue, especially if they get um, into they get solidified as that 8 seed and they got to go up against Detroit in the first round, right? Like just the experience that he'll definitely grow and get better. Um, but yeah, I just thought it was a high paced game. I thought it was a high paced game. It was a fun game. Went down to the wire. There were some big shots that he made. Kobe White came off the bench. He was tremendous. Um, and I think this team should get a playoff bid because I think these guys can really um, cause some problems to whoever they match up against. It will be Detroit, but like if they were to match up with any of the top 3 seeds, I think they could be a tough matchup, especially in a first round matchup, just with the pace and style that they play, and a guy like LaMelo, who's one of the best playmakers in the league. So I'm excited to see what shakes out here. Um, I wouldn't pick them versus Detroit. I think Detroit's defense is just too consistent, too physical, too in your face, right? They're kind of an abrasive defense, for lack of a better word, similar to the OKCs of the world. Um, if it wasn't for Wemby, they'd have a better defense than the Spurs too. I think Wemby is kind of levels the playing field with everybody just with all that he can do. But just a tremendous defense, tremendous defense. And then you get Cade back. That's going to be a problem. So I wouldn't pick the Hornets to beat Detroit unless Cade's not going to be there for whatever reason, even though he's already, came back in the regular season, right? Like if he, somehow re-injured himself, knock on wood. I'll just go Hornets, but with Cade there and with the defense that they have, man, I think that's going to be a tall task for the Hornets, the way that Detroit team just defends so consistently. So I see them pushing it, right? I see it could be a 6-game series, maybe even a 7-game series. But ultimately, I'd probably side with Detroit. If it was a Knicks series, I could definitely see that one being interesting. Even a Celtics series, I could see being interested with this way the Celtics still love to play the analytical game, and this team being able to match them shooting wise. I think that could be a really interesting series. But they'll play the winner of or the loser of the. Oh, who are those other 2 teams? I'm drawing a blank. But of the 7A seed, they'll play, and then we'll see how that shakes out. Anyways, great game yesterday. I want to jump into the Phoenix and Trailblazers game because that was another great game. But I think there was a lot of good to take away from. I thought the right team won last night in terms of what team is going to have a better shot moving forward and really competing as an 8th seed if they get that bid in a full playoff series, especially with Bam going down. You know what I'm saying? So I thought the right team won. Thought it was a really high-paced game, a lot of great performances across the board, a lot of tough shot making being done. Pretty much, everybody who played minutes on both sides played good games. Like the worst performance was probably Colin Knipple. I think he went 2 for 12. But even him, he still had some moments. He played really good defense. He's a guy who, if he's on the court, he plays the right way, and that just kind of stabilizes your offense because he's such a shooting threat and because he's going to play the right way no matter what. Even him having a bad shooting night, he's still such an important piece to have on the court. So a lot of fun to watch, guys. But let's get into that Portland and all right, the Portland Trailblazers versus the Phoenix Suns last night. It started as kind of a game that was quickly getting away from the Suns, right? I think the Trailblazers at one point went up by like 15 in the first half. They closed the gap a little bit going into halftime, and then in the third quarter, it was like a 10-point lead that Portland had, and then Phoenix would bring it down to like 6, and then they would keep kind of ebbing and flowing between that 6 to 10-point range, and then eventually, the Suns broke that threshold. They made it a competitive game, and then from there on out, pretty much it was a competitive game down the wire. But the main takeaway for me is the fact that Denny Advida was just the best player on the court throughout this entire game. On a court that had, Devin Booker, obviously, Dylan Brooks, who's played amazing this season. You got guys like Drew Holiday on the other side with him. Just some really high level players on the court. And Denny, we know Denny's been the most consistent, best offensive player for the Trailblazers this season. but we had Denny give like an all NBA superstar level performance last night. I think he ended the game with 41 or 44 points. Nice, amazing, nasty drive to end the game where he gets Jordan Goodwin, on an isolation on the perimeter, hits him with a move, gets downhill. Dylan Brooks overhelps, ends up being out of position. He finishes, kind of reverses back to the right side of the hoop on him and finishes for the and one. Tough bucket. And he just looked like the best player on the court, and he really just owned that moment. And I think what I took away outside of Denny playing like a superstar last night also is that is the Portland Trailblazers team that a lot of us foresaw at the beginning of the season, right? I was amongst a ton of other people, right? Somebody who spoke to where we thought the Trailblazers could be this season, and I think a lot of people had them being like a 6, 7, 8 range team this season based on how they played last year, and then you know thought the advancements they would make this year would put them there. Now, to be honest with you, beginning of the season, midpoint of the season, it didn't always look like they would get to that point. But that team that competed last night um, definitely looked like a team that a lot of us had foresaw, which is awesome to see come to fruition. And to be fair, right, when you think about the season that Portland had, right, you forget that the team started with Chauncey Billups as their head coach. Um, Chauncey gets indicted on this, insider gambling ring that, is being investigated by the NBA. He's not their coach anymore. Thiago Splitter steps up. Terrific coach, by the way, did a terrific job. I think he needs to get more credit for the work he's done, just taking over early in the season, when he wasn't expected to be a head coach and doing the job extremely well, being willing to, move Shaden Sharp, your second leading scorer, I believe, to the bench, right, to maximize the team, playing without guys in spurts like Drew Holiday, who, as you can see, is their steadiness for that team, right? Like he, at 35 years old, is still such an important piece, such a good point of attack defender still. And it's being on a young team like this has allowed him to take more ownership on the offensive end of the floor as well again. And he's played a magnificent role. And then you got guys like Scoot, who I think have done a great job at developing since coming back from injury, playing behind a guy like Drew Holiday, right? Like learning defensively, he's grown a lot. I think, that's going to be invaluable for his career because Scoot is an athlete. Like if he can pair that with good defensive instincts, there's no reason why he can't have a career similar to Drew. Maybe not the same caliber as Drew, right? Two-time champion, et cetera, all defensive team multiple times. Drew a few times was in the running for like defensive player of the year. His defense was so legitimate. You know what I'm saying? So not saying that caliber, but like a guy who's going to be a potent and perennial, like great role player on a team. Absolutely, he could be that, and maybe even more, right? With the expectations we had out of Scoop coming out of his draft class. But anyways, I thought it was a great game. I thought Portland's toughness was there. I thought their ability to weather the storm when Phoenix did make a push spoke to the growth that they've made and how important guys like Jeremy Grant and Drew Holiday are, being veterans, being guys who have um, been there, done that in a lot of different ways. And I thought they went out and scrapped for that win, and they definitely deserve that win. It's amazing to me because I think if they played this game 2 months ago, I think Phoenix likely wipes the floor with them, right? But it's about how you finish. You know what I'm saying? It's about how you finish. And for whatever reason, Phoenix just hasn't been as connected as a team as they were, at different parts of the season. Um, and you can see that. And I think some of that's like Dylan Brooks missing time, right? He's such an important personality for a team. That when he's not on the court, you start playing differently, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think Grayson Allen's been on the court. He's a huge piece for them. He's like the you know personality wise or play style wise, right? Like the way he competes is similar to Dylan Brooks. He doesn't talk as much in the media stuff, but definitely similar to Dylan Brooks and just his toughness. And you know, without guys like that, it's evident when they're not on the court because, when toughness is kind of the backbone of your team, when you're missing your guys who set that tone, it goes a long way. One of your two at least, and that can make all the difference in the world. So I think they'll still get in. I think they'll beat the winner of um, the Warriors game. And to be honest with you, the Warriors 37 wins, they shouldn't even be getting a chance to play in this game, but that's what the play-in is. I think Phoenix will still get in. I think they'll be hungry after that loss, and they'll be more rested than the team that they play against. And then, I think they'll get that 8 seed and ultimately, you know, got to play OKC. And I made this joke to my brothers when we were in our group chat yesterday. I was like, wow, Portland, you played great. Congratulations. Your reward is you get Wemby in the first round. And that's just the reality of it, right? You played a great game, Denny. Now you got Wemby at the rim next game. One of the best downhill scorers in the NBA. You get Wemby next round. We'll see how that one goes. But, kudos to them, right? You still got to go out there and compete. You can't duck no smoke. And I don't think they will. And I think it'll be, a good growth series for the Portland Trailblazers. And if, the Phoenix Suns get in on the 8 seed, I think it'll be a good growth series for them as well. If they get Grayson Allen back, I think they'll at least be able to match the physicality of the OKC Thunder, maybe get a game off of them. But anything more than that, I think it's just asking a lot out of that team who's a little hurt right now, a little bit banged up, and just not quite where they, were, maybe in like the February time frame. So that's my thoughts. But let's get into some playoff matchups. Let's talk about some. All right, here we go. Let's get into these playoff matchups. So we already talked about, obviously Hornets Heat. We already talked about Phoenix Trailblazers. Tonight we're going to have 76ers versus Orlando, and we're going to have the Warriors versus the Clippers. Now, to be honest with you, I'd prefer to see the Clippers win. I think the Clippers will win if I had to pick between the two. I'm a rock with the Clippers. Now, obviously, they got, the Warriors got Steph back. You get Steph on the court. Who knows what's going to happen? I'm not confident in this pick. Anytime you're playing against Steph Curry, arrested Steph Curry, that is, it's a tough one. But I think Kawhi's been playing at a higher level than Steph this season. I think right now, today, right, with Kawhi, being able to have one of his best seasons in the past 4 or 5 years, he's the better player. Again, for one game, you never want to count out Steph. But I think, Kawhi is going to be the better player. I think you got a guy like Darius Garland who's found his groove. You got some young athletes there. You still got some consistent vets like a Brook Lopez, like a Nick Batum. They just have found a good winning formula. And I think they're in a better groove than the Warriors are at this point, right? Warriors have had Steph in and out of their lineup. Their consistency on offense and defense hasn't always been there. And they, losing Moses Moody was a huge loss for a team that's already depleted of wing players after losing Jimmy. It's just a lot to ask. And I would rather see, to be honest with you, I'd rather see, the Clippers move forward. Honestly, I'd rather see the Clippers beat Phoenix as well. Like, I'd rather see the Clippers win Phoenix, and then, advance to that first round matchup, see Kawhi versus OKC. I think in terms of like the physicality, I'd probably argue that Phoenix, if they're healthy, can maybe compete from a physicality standpoint a little bit better than the Clippers. But that's not to be said. That's not to say that the Clippers can't handle their physicality. Just the way that Phoenix has played for a large part of the season, they've done a good job of being one of those teams who are very hard nosed and can compete well. So my thoughts, but I'd rather see the Clippers advance, right? If I had to pick, I'd rather see the Clippers advance. I think they will win tonight. Them versus Phoenix, I think, will be dependent on rest and everything like that. But I think they'll win tonight, and I'd like to see them advance and get that A seed. 76ers versus Orlando. If we got healthy Joel and Tyrese, I'm rocking with those guys. Both teams, just a lot to be desired. It has been good to see Joel be able to play stretches of the season as healthy as Joel could be and playing at least offensively at a very high level in spurts. And I think if he could, give them that, then I think that'll go a long way. And tough game to pick, but I'm going to rock with the 76ers. Let's get into some first round matchups. So we don't know who the first seed is going to play on either side, right? Because these things are still getting hashed out. For OKC, I think it's 5 games, maybe 4, regardless of who they play. For Detroit, I do think that the Hornets can push them to an extended series. I don't know if these two teams can. Reason being is because these two teams aren't as equipped to handle the defense and the physicality that Detroit's going to bring. Now, 76ers, what I'll say is if you got Joel, right, playing at, 85%, then I think that's going to get you at least one game. Tyrese can handle the ball pressure really well. Um, so I think that these guys could potentially take a series versus Detroit to 6 games. But then, they don't have the same level of depth. So I don't know if they could take it beyond that, right? Again, if Joel, if Tyrese are playing the caliber of basketball that they can play with the wing defense that they have and guys like Paul George, um, and stuff like that, I definitely think they can make them competitive. But that just remains to be seen. Honestly, I think the Hornets would probably give them the best run for their money if I had to pick. I would say that. And then on the OKC side, like I said, I just don't think there's a chance. And then if I move my head real quick, you got the 2 seeds here. So for the Spurs, the 2 seed is set, and they're going to play the Trailblazers. I think the Trailblazers are getting beaten 5 games max. I just think, with their best player being such a rim dominant guy, I think he's going to struggle in a series where, you have possibly the best rim protector ever. Maybe not the best ever, but one of the best rim protectors ever, right? That shouldn't say that when you got guys like Hakeem, Bill Russell, stuff like that. But, in this era, he's the best rim protector of this era, of this new era. Um, yeah, I think that's going to be just a tough series for them. Now, you do got tough vets, right? You got Drew, right? You got Jeremy Grant. You got, these young dogs who can get after it, right? So, I think they could steal a game, especially if you get Denny playing the caliber of basketball that he did play. But I just think it's going to be hard for Denny in this series to reach these peaks when you got a guy like Stephen Castle as your primary defender. And then at the rim, you're meeting a guy um, like Wimby, right? And Clegane as your starting center, right? Like he's not going to necessarily take Wimby away from the rim that much, right? Like he can shoot a three, but are you going to rely on him to shoot 8 or 9 threes in a game? I don't think so. So you know, is what it is on that front. I think it's just not a great matchup for the Portland Trailblazers. Um, I think I think Boston, another 5 game series. Yeah, another 5 game series, whether it's Orlando or the 76ers. I think the 76ers could take it to 6. I'm not a big believer in Orlando right now, to be honest with you. I thought Desmond Bain for a stretch was, playing incredible basketball. I think Paulo figured it out for a bit, but he still has his kind of peaks and valleys. Um, I just don't know if they're good enough to take it past 5, guys. Yeah, so I think that's going to be a relatively easy series. Um, I think Knicks versus Hawks could be interesting just because the pace that the Hawks play with. I think the Knicks will ultimately win that one in at least 6 games. I don't think that would be a 7 game series, quite possibly 5. Um, I think, even though Jalen, they do run, right? And running can be a problem on the Atlanta Hawks side. But I will say, in terms of the roster that Atlanta has, Jalen at least can guard somewhat, right? Like I don't think he's going to be a terrific defender in the series or in any series for that matter. But like he's not going to get hunted quite as much versus a team like this, right? Because Jalen Johnson isn't a hunter, right? Like he's not going to just ISO you in the half court because his half court game isn't that good. Um, Guys like C.J. McCollum, um, people like that who can score the heck out of the ball, who's a tough cover for anybody, right? But not the best athlete. I feel like Jalen, can move his feet decent enough to do a job, right? Do a job and like not allow him to just have a crazy game, right? Like he may hit his averages but not have a crazy game. So point being, I think there's players there where Jalen isn't going to get exposed as bad, and because of that, I think that's going to play into the Knicks' favor. So I'd probably take the Knicks in 5, maybe 6 games. Um, then you got this is interesting. I really want to talk about. You got the Nuggets versus the Minnesota. A lot of people are saying, this is a pick'em series, and I think it's from previous series, right? Like they've split over the past couple of years. Denver winning one, Minnesota winning more recently, all that sort of stuff. But I have to tell you guys, I think this is going to be the most decisive victory either one of these teams has had in the past couple seasons. And I'm saying that to say I think the Nuggets are going to kind of crush these guys. Now, they're going to be competitive games, right? Like it's not going to be 20-point blowouts in these games and stuff like that. but I do think it's going to be a relatively quick series. Like, I personally do not see this series going 7. It's not to say I can't be wrong. Anthony Edwards could come back, knee feeling great. They, gave him a cortisone shot. He's not feeling no pain, and he's just, Anthony Edwards, right? Top 5 player in the NBA when he's healthy. But I think more than likely, Denver's been rolling. They're in a much better flow than Minnesota is at this point, and I think we're going to see that in this matchup ultimately. And I think this has a potential to go 5. Definitely don't see a sweep happening. Think gentleman sweep, maybe 6. And the only reason I'm saying maybe 6 is because I do think there's something to be said for familiarity, right? Teams that know each other, and these two teams over the past couple of years definitely know each other. But I think Denver at this point just has much more weapons. They're much more dangerous on the offensive end of the floor. And I think offensively for Minnesota, if Anthony Edwards isn't 100%, I don't think they can expose Denver's weaknesses on defense as much as they need to, which is being a slow-footed, less athletic team, right? I don't think if Anthony Edwards is 100%, they can expose those weaknesses as much as they need to make it a series. You got to be able to get downhill, attack, put pressure on the rim, because that's where Denver lacks, and I just don't think they're going to be able to expose those weaknesses as much as they've been able to in the past. That's my thoughts on the Denver's Minnesota series. Now we get into the 4 versus 5 matchups in each series, and I gotta say, guys, these are tough ones to predict. Now, I'm a Lakers fan, I know it, right? Not so much the Lakers versus the Rocket series. I think, realistically, right, as a Lakers fan, you're losing your best 2 scorers. I saw a video of somebody, just made a pretty general statement, but it's pretty obvious, right? He said, take the 2 best scorers off of any team and what do they look like, right? And it's absolutely true. Now, I think, as a Lakers fan, as someone who's always going to rock with the Lakers, you try to find ways to hope for the best, to be confident in the team you got out there, right? Team went on a 3-game winning streak to end the season. They looked good. They looked like they were playing in continuity, and they looked like they believed in each other, most importantly. And I do think because they are playing Houston, they can make games competitive, but I don't know if they have enough right now to win the series, right? The goal is, for me, I think I've heard a few other people say this, right? Can you extend the series? Can you make, can you, steal a game in Houston? Can you split at home on the first 2 games? Can you steal a game in Houston? Can you make it a 5 or 6 game series to where there's a chance for Luka or AR to come back? And then you have an extra offensive weapon that I think can really help you in these ultra physical, highly competitive playoff games. One thing I don't think, unless the Lakers just get way out physical and they just don't match the intensity of Houston, is that there's going to be very many blowouts, or at least very wide blowouts, just because Houston offensively, even they went to a streak where they played good, right? Things tighten up in the playoffs. I don't know if Houston has enough to consistently beat them by 20, right? I think it's going to be 10-point games, stuff like that, and when games are close, anything can happen. So I think if the Lakers can keep them close, I do think they can still 1, maybe 2, and try to extend the series to a point where they get one of their guys back. But it remains to be seen. And if those guys don't come back, if they're out indefinitely, specifically for the series, then it just is what it is at that point. So don't need to spend much time there. I do got faith in the Lakers. I think with a guy like Marcus Smart coming back recently, um, the layers that he brings to a team, the competitive fire that he brings to a team, I think goes a long way. I think the shot making of Rui and Luke Kennard will go a long way. I think what they've gotten out of some of their young guys will go a long way. Maybe unpopular opinion, but I thought they should have signed Drew Timme to that, extension rather than Nick Smith Jr. And sole purpose being is what we saw in the first half of that Oklahoma City Thunder game, the second Oklahoma City Thunder game most recently, when none of our best 3 guys played, when AR, Luka, and LeBron were all out. Because JJ talked about it, right, and he talked about how they needed some more ball handling through these series. But I think, man, the job that Drew did, knowing that he's going to have a slower-footed person on him, and his skill set being able to initiate offense from that 4-man spot or 5-man spot, depending on what position you got him in, I think it'd be so invaluable and take pressures off guards. The reality is, Nick Smith Jr., he's still going to have, like, if they play against, you know, if you know, let's say they're playing against the Rockets, right? And they want Amen Thompson on the point of attack, right? Against him. Good luck, right? Like, you know, he's passing that ball off anyways, right? Whereas Drew Timmy's less likely to get one of those matchups, right? Like he probably will have a Clint Capella on him, or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And maybe they adjust and put one of your primary defenders on him, but then that frees up one of your guards. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you did want to pressure him with Amen Thompson, right? Great, you pass it. Now who's bringing the ball up, right? Somebody who can create an advantage for you. So, and in the half court, I think he's just better, right? More mature, you know, can extend the defense, hit open shots. Not saying Nick Smith Jr. can't, but 6'10", right? He can rebound a little bit. I think he could just do more. So I would have liked to see them bring him on for this playoff run, but you know, I get the logic behind it. I guess I get the logic behind it, but I think that's something that could have really helped them in a series like this in spot minutes. You know, play 4 or 5 minutes here, take pressure off your guards, handle the rock a little bit. You know, initiate offense, because he's just a good decision maker, right? He's just a good decision maker. I don't want to spend too much time on that. You know, as is, if the Lakers don't, you know, get anybody back, I definitely think they can get 1 game off the Rockets. I think they can potentially get 2. I think the Rockets are going to be surprised, because I think LeBron, um, at this point in his career, is still just such a good initiator of offense and just such a smart, high IQ player, that he's going to be able to, not every night, but some nights, just control the pace of the game, control the game in its entirety, dang near. Um, and give his team a shot to win, at least I'd say. But then we got, and then last point on that, right? If he is able to extend, they do come back, you know, and then we got ourselves a series, right? Who knows what's going to happen? But then we got Cleveland versus Toronto, and this is a very interesting series to me. Now, um, when Cleveland made that trade, I was like, "Whoo-wee, they may be the favorite to come out the East," and it just hasn't manifested itself yet, which it rarely does when you have these quick things getting thrown together, right? Like, adding James Harden to your team is a significant change, and he's definitely gotten more out of the bigs out there in Cleveland, but defensively they haven't been as good. Um, you know, there's just some things, right? Like, you just not defending as consistently. Offense is a little bit sporadic at times, right? Like, just, you know, standing and watching, a little too much. You know what I'm saying? So, um, I think this could be a really good series, to be honest with you. I think ultimately Cleveland will win, and I think Cleveland just has more offense, more layers to go to, and I think they can match up with, you know, Scotty Barnes, Podol, if that's how you pronounce his name. My apologies if not. Ingram, et cetera, et cetera. I think they got better guard play, obviously, right? You got Donovan Harden. I don't know how Toronto matches up with that. So I think they should win, but I think, you know, Toronto has a little bit more dog in them, you know, a little bit more aggression in them, a little bit more, you know, compete, right? Like, just going to compete hard, and more athleticism. Um, in spots, right? When you're talking about guys like Scotty Barnes and stuff, or maybe not more athleticism, more physicality is probably the right word for it. More physicality, and that can win you a game or two. So I'll pick Cleveland. I think in a 6 game series. I think there's going to be a lot of close games in the series. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes 7. Um, I think Toronto's just a little bit tougher than Cleveland is, and I think that's going to be the story of Cleveland. Even if they do advance, I think the teams they're going to run into, right? You run into Detroit. Detroit's going to be tougher than you. So I don't see Cleveland making it past the second round, to be honest with you. But that's my thoughts, guys. That's my thoughts for the first round of the NBA playoffs. Excited to see what's going to happen. I already told you guys. You know, I think ultimately, you know, we're set to see probably a OKC Spurs conference championship. We're probably set to see a um, uh, Boston Detroit conference championship. By the way, what were the Spurs doing in that last game versus Denver? Why did they, like, not try to win, really? Like, what? Wimby played the game before he could have played. Like, if you win that game, then right, the Lakers get the 3 seed. You don't have to see neither OKC or the Spurs or OKC or Denver, quite possibly, until the championship, or until the conference championship. That doesn't make sense to me. Why did the Spurs not go all out to try and win that game? Right? Like obviously you think you can beat everybody, whatever, whatever. Right? I get it. But also, right, having a playoff series where you play, whoever the Suns in the first round, and then you play the winner of the Lakers Rockets, who should be a cakewalk for you, like in terms of what a second round series should be. Like it should be a 5 game series, six max. But now you got most likely Denver in the second round, which is going to be a nightmare because there's one guy who neutralizes a lot of what Wemby does. It's that guy over there in Denver, Joker. Just was weird, right? Just a weird decision for them not to go all out, and I think Wemby was healthy enough to play. And then you go all out, and then you get a week and some change off. You know what I'm saying? I don't get that decision, but you guys tell me if I'm crazy. Anyways, appreciate you guys staying and watching. If you like the content, make sure to like, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. Leave a comment. Tell me if my takes are trash. Tell me where I'm tripping. Tell me what team you don't think I see. What team you have picked different, right? Tell me if you think Toronto's going to crush Cleveland. Tell me if you think the Lakers are going to find their way to beat the Rockets and make kind of a Cinderella run with their two men down until the second round where they can get them back. Let me know, right? We want to engage in these comments, but appreciate all the love. We're almost to 100 subscribers on YouTube, by the way. Let's run it up. Let's get to 100. Appreciate you guys. Peace.